So, welcome to this session. So, we were looking at competitive advantage. How should companies use resources to gain competitive advantage? In order to do that, the companies should identify and classify the firm's resources in terms of strengths and weaknesses. We have discussed this in fair detail. How to do this? What is the type of checklist you should have and all that. Now, using these strengths, what should the company do? The company should combine the firm's strengths to specific capabilities. A company may be very advanced in some skilled welding techniques. That is its specific capability. So, if you look at PCB welding, it is a skilled welding. It is not a very rough type of welding. It has to be done very well in a very fine manner, so that the weld does not between the different these things there is no flow of the weld from one point to the other point, that is a liquid flow. So, this is called fine welding. This fine welding, it is an art actually. When you look at this PCB, it is quite an art, and then when you come to chips, it is even further. Okay. So, you have to have skills to produce these chips. So, if a company has this type of capability, it is its corporate capability. It is many times called the core competency of a company. So, I gave you the example of welding, because welding has changed over the last few decades. The scenario of welding itself has undergone a terrific change. Earlier you used to have a grump saying that it is a weld with respect to a door. So, if you touch that welding grump, usually some iron chip would get into your hand. Now, what is the present day welding? It is so smooth that you will not even make out that it has been welded. So, this is a type of advances that have come out in the field of welding, not to mention about the other fields like electronics, IT and all that. Now, using these core competencies, the company should move to distinctive competencies. Use these core competencies, that is the specific capabilities. Move to distinctive competencies. What do you mean by moving to distinctive competencies? This is where your core competency will become difficult to be imitated by the competitor. So, when it becomes difficult to be imitated by the competitor, you have this distinctive competency coming into the picture. Now, you look at a firm like Gillette, this example of MASH 3, the type of core competencies, when it moved into distinctive competencies, what really happened to this company? This company could hold on to these distinctive competencies for quite a considerable period of time, still holding on. Result is it is having a sustainable competitive advantage. So, you look at the profit potential and capabilities of your distinctive competencies. When you look at that profit potential and capabilities of your distinctive competencies, you are likely, that is, a company is likely to move towards sustainable competitive advantage. When you do this type of exercise, that is, you list out the strengths, you list out the capabilities of the company, how you can really harness these capabilities. This will give you an idea of what is the best strategy that you should adopt. It will also tell you what is the gap in your resources. Similarly, when you are looking at weaknesses of the company, you will also come across the type of gaps in resources with respect to the company's strategic position in the marketplace. What is the type of resource gap that the company is finding? So, you should invest, that is, a company should invest in upgrading its weaknesses. So, identify the resource gaps and invest in upgrading weaknesses. There is a many times questions are asked, there is this doubt that will the advantage that a company gets initially, will it become sustainable? How long will it be sustainable? This is an important question which as a strategic planner you may have to answer. So, this is important not only for the marketplace, it is important for the ongoing operations of the company as well. So, this brings you to a very important question: how do you determine the sustainability of an advantage? So, that sustainability of an advantage is looked at under different heads. One is durability, that is the rate at which a firm's resources and capabilities become obsolete. This obsolete, this term obsolete is very important, is becoming even more important in the present day context. So, technology itself is becoming obsolete in a very short time. So, what you thought earlier is going to carry the company through for quite a reasonable amount of period, maybe 5 years, 10 years. You may find to your great surprise in the next 2 to 3 years that technology itself has undergone a change. The best example for this is none other than Indian Telephone Industries. Earlier, a few decades back, up to 80s, even mid 80s you can say, the company used to pride itself in its trouser and crossbar technologies. Now, what happened after this mid 80s? So, the type of mechanical phones which you used to get from ITI, after the company started operations, many people were very happy, that is the customers were very happy with these mechanical phones of ITI. So, it was a circular dial and each time you have to dial this number. So, you may think they were very happy because the number of phone connections at that point of time was limited. You could do this dialing of each number, all those types of things. Yes, quite possible. Now, many times people used to wonder why this phone is weighing, that phone, that big black phone used to weigh between 5 to 10 kgs. So, many times the customer used to think, suppose this phone were to drop on my leg, this leg will break, that type of scenario. So, many times the customer would be thinking, why can't ITI bring out a sleeker version of this phone instead of this. So, all these questions were answered in mid 80s when in came the, what do you call, the change in technology. So, from mechanical it moved over to electronics. The result is the capabilities of ITI as a leader, as a giant in fact in the field of Strowger and crossbar became extinct because the technology itself became obsolete. When the technology itself become obsolete, so the durability is called in question. So, in came the electronics entry into the field of communication. The result was that you got, instead of this circular dialing, the push button dialing of the telephones. So, you had a slim phone, push button dialing, and it used to, the phone used to look very sleek, and the customer who was earlier in, what do you call, voicing his great appreciation for the circular telephone, circular dial telephone of the ITI, took to this push button telephone very fast. He said, this is much better than the previous phone. Now, what happened in this whole transition of technology from Strowger and crossbar to electronics? So many thousands of employees, their skills became redundant. It was not required by the company. This is what technological obsolescence can do to a company, and no better example than that of ITI only. So, a large number of workers from two divisions, that is the Strowger and crossbar, it was required for them to upgrade their skills. Many of them had crossed the age of 45 and they were asking, perhaps from their point of view, a valid question, should we learn this technology at this age now? So, this is what changes in technology can do to a company and its employees. So, it was a very big challenge for ITI to train, that is its workforce, without making them feel that you are redundant for the company, you are not wanted. So, they had to bolster their confidence, retrain them, all those types of things. So, many of these employees, some of these training programs, it was also initiated with the help of IASC to upgrade the skills of these employees back in 80s only. So, this is what durability comes or can cause to a company. that is a rate at which a firm's resources and capabilities become obsolete. Then the second yardstick is imitability, that is the rate at which a firm's resources and capabilities can be duplicated by others. We call this under so many heads. So, there used to be, when the first slimline telephone came out from ITI, they wanted to commercialize this product. I am talking of the 80s. So, before commercializing the product, so they were very happy that ITI was able to come out with this slimline telephone, and there were lot of kudos given to ITI for coming out with ITI's R&D for coming out with a very good product in the marketplace. So, at that point of time, this slimline phone in fact adorned the topmost echelons in the country, the tables of the president, the prime minister, then the Supreme Court judges, the High Court judges, all those types of things. So, before it went into this commercialization stage. So, before going to this commercialization stage, they wanted to find out whether a similar phone is available in the marketplace. To the great chagrin of ITI, they found that in the grey market a similar phone was available in Bangalore only, whereas the price at which the company wanted to sell this phone, suppose it was the company had fixed it at a price X, to their next surprise they found that it was available at a rate much lower than X. So, the company had to rethink. So, this is what happens when what you thought is an advantage, competitive advantage, lends itself to duplication, that is your core competency lends itself to duplication by the other players. So, this is the imitability, the rate at which a firm's resources and capabilities can be duplicated by others. A core competency can be imitated to the extent, kindly note these points, it is transparent, transferable and replicable. Suppose these things are there with respect to your core competency, it lends itself to imitation. The question, what is this transparency? Speed with which other firms can understand the relationship of resources and capabilities, that is supporting a successful firm strategy, that is Gillette, Sensor, Mash 3. So, Gillette came out with this sensor blade technology, then the Mash 3, we have dealt with this in detail. It is not that these things were not there earlier in the Indian market, they were there. Only thing is, when you are looking at through the prism of strategy, you are trying to bring them under these different umbrellas, that is transparency, then transferability, the ability of a competitor to gather resources and capabilities to support a competitive challenge. So, suppose the competitor is able to give a real challenge to you, that is the company, then again this imitability comes into picture. So, this transferability of this whole core competency, what you thought was a competitive advantage for you, it may be just broken through this transferability. So, the next one is replicability, ability of a competitor to use duplicated resources has happened to well known players in the Indian market. The best example of this is the Bajaj scooter in the 80s and 90s. So, there used to be a what do you call tagline of Bajaj saying Hamara Bajaj, all those, and this Hamara Bajaj was very popular and giving value for money at that point of time. So, many times you had to wait for several years to get a Bajaj scooter, especially the Chetak scooter, till the perhaps the late 80s. So, that was also the scenario to get a telephone connection in the country. So, you have to wait for a number of years to get a telephone connection. So, all this changed from 90s. So, now what is the present day setup? If you really look at it, present day you may not require a telephone connection at all to your house, because the mobile phones is doing that job. So, almost all the persons in the house have a mobile phone, they are easily accessible on the mobile. So, many houses do not even have a landline now. Earlier having a landline was considered a prestige up to the 80s. Now, because landline phones were to get from BSNL, that itself was a big challenge and an involved process. Now, BSN, see, this is what market can do. Suppose in the present day setup, when a consumer wants to disconnect his landline connection, goes to BSNL office, the BSNL, which earlier never used to bother, asks the consumer, why do you want to disconnect the connection? There are these plans where the charges are very low, why do not you keep the landline connection? It is not going to cost you much and it will help BSNL also. So, suppose you are having that sentiment that BSNL is a public sector company, why not I do my small bit to support it, which many people, especially from that age group, that is those who were youngsters in the 70s and the 80s, they will say yes, we will go ahead with this landline connection, pay this minimal charge, keep that phone, okay, it helps BSNL. So, this is what can happen with respect to a company. So, this replicability, the ability of a competitor to use duplicated resources and capabilities to imitate this can give you a good idea of when you are looking at it, how competitors can replicate the firm's success. So, by duplication, this is what grey market is all about. And these types of electronic goods market abound in places like Bangalore, Bombay and other metro cities in the country. Now, with all this, we look at the internal factors analysis summary. This internal factors analysis summary, when you look at it, This is for the same company which we looked at for external factors, that is Maytag. What are the strengths of Maytag? One of the important strengths of Maytag, this consulting company which did the exercise for Maytag, found was the quality culture of Maytag. This quality is a very important attribute for a company's product. So, I was giving you the example of Honda. What is the tagline with respect to Honda engines? The tagline with respect to Honda engines is, especially the automotive engines, is that even its competitors recognize that the Honda engine perhaps is the best. Okay. So, this with respect to Maytag, the competitors also used to find that the quality culture of Maytag is something impregnable, not easy to be defeated, not easy to get overcome. So, this quality Maytag culture helped this company to hold its position in the American market. So, this was the first strength of the company, that is a quality Maytag culture, and there is a comment on this at the in the last column, quality key to success. So, this you can find with respect to any product. Take for example, a simple almost a what do you call essential product, that is the cooker. So many brands of cookers are available. You have the Hawkins, you have the Pigeon, so many brands of cookers they say. But with all that, suppose you ask the housewife, which brand of cooker do you want for your kitchen? Probably she will say, go in for Prestige. So, that is a type of quality assurance that Prestige, the brand, has given to most of the Indian housewives. So, the second strength of a company like Maytag was its experienced top management. They know what is the type of appliances Maytag produces, and when they know what is the type of appliances Maytag produces, it is a great advantage for them. The most immediate competitor for Maytag when this consulting exercise was done was Hoover. Whereas Maytag did not have that much of international orientation as Hoover, this Hoover's international orientation was a distinct advantage for the company, that is Hoover. So, when you come to weaknesses, the weaknesses of Maytag was found to be process oriented R&D. So, in R&D itself you can have a product oriented R&D or a process oriented R&D. So, in suppose the product changes, let us say many times the product change may get necessitated due to technology change, all those types of things. So, if you really look at it, I was giving you the example of a washing machine. So, many times the question that was being asked before you went into the washing machine purchase was, is this washing machine close to the hand wash. So, whether you look at IFB or whether you look at some other brand LG or whichever brand you may take, the first question that was being asked was is it very close to hand wash, because this is a machine and it rotates your clothes, that is, a drum rotates and that your clothes also rotate in the whole process. The fear was your clothes might get torn much faster in the whole this thing. So, that was a reason for this, why is it closer to the hand wash. So, this was considered to be a weakness with respect to hand Maytag, that it was going slow on coming out with new products. Okay. So, this is what process oriented R&D can always do to a company. So, when they took 5 strengths and 5 weaknesses and rated the thing, that is company, they came out with a rating for Maytag at 3.05, that is about 60%. So, this is the type of thing which can come out. So, what have we done in the whole process? We have looked at EFAS, we have looked at IFAS. Before we go into this SFAS, that is the strategic factors analysis, let us see what is the type of issues that are coming in the 21st century. When you look at it, the first thing that you are noting is, as more and more companies become hyper competitive, it will become harder to maintain a competitive advantage. Unless a company has a distinctive competency which is not only hard to imitate, but also durable. There is one more line which follows this. Durability has, however, little value during technical discontinuity. So, if your technology itself becomes obsolete, then durability has no meaning. So, where is the technology to prop up the product? It is not there. So, you have to discontinue the product, there is no point in this. Is what market always does for a company. So, many times it is told to a consumer, the consumer tells a company, this product has sentimental value to me. Okay. What is this? What is the example of this product? Maybe look at an automotive car. Okay. The car may be an ambassador car, that car might have been used by his grandfather, came from his grandfather to father, then it is with his son, and the son would like to give it to his son as a gift from the earlier generations. So, he may be wanting to keep that ambassador car in spite of all its inadequacies in the present day setup. Okay. You might say, look, your great grandfather used to drive this car. So, this is what the ambassador did serve the Indian market as a robust car for several decades. So, passed on from one generation to the other, and having an ambassador car at that point of time was considered to be a great prestige. So, now if you look at the present day automotive market, you do not find the ambassador cars at all. Maybe in some of the governmental offices, you may still find this ambassador car, but individual wise they have moved on. You took in came the Maruti, after the Maruti came so many other type brands of car, whether you have the Toyota or the Honda or the, now in the whole process Ford, which was considered to be the, what do you call, the father of the automotive industry, that itself has gone into oblivion. Okay. So, you do not find Ford cars in real competition in the present day market. The Japanese cars have overtaken the Ford in the American market only. So, you find that the average American is going for the Japanese car rather than the American Ford. So, the earlier this thing was, father was an employee of Ford, son would be an employee of Ford, grandson would be all this is gone. So, this is what technological obsolescence can do for a company. The second one is subcontracting by firms to reduce costs and become globally competitive. This applies to in almost total to these IT companies. So, name the company, a major company in the Indian setup, whether it is Wipro or Infosys or whatever, they are trying to find out what is the activity they should concentrate on, whether it is developing the software or whether it is, they do not want their time and energy to be taken away or dissipated in activities which could be subcontracted out by the company, maybe a transport. The company may not like to have a transport department in that sense. There may be just a coordinator for the transportation activity of the company, a very small setup. So, if you look at a company like Infosys only, you find that large number of BMTC buses carry their employees from almost all parts of the city of Bangalore to the company. So, contrast it with the earlier scenario with respect to ITI. ITI's transport department was huge. In the 70s and 80s, it used to say we have 160 to 170 buses operating in different routes of Bangalore. So, it called for a terrific investment in the transport department, and all these buses had to come in time for the companies to start work at right time. So, if the company's general shift was at 8:45, almost all these buses plying on different routes would drop the employees between 8:15 to 8:20 in the ITI's main factory, so that they can have their breakfast in the canteen and move to the departments. So, canteen was also a very big activity. Now, what is happening? So, if you look at the present day setup, transport department has almost become extinct, not present in most of the present day companies. This is subcontracted out, saving on that. Even the payroll activity is subcontracted out. So, they do not want the mainstream employees to get engaged in all these activities. This is called support activities. These support activities, they say the company gains by subcontracting. It also helps other firms to make their livelihood in the marketplace. So, primary activities to increase in importance in hyper competitive global industries. So, this is what is happening in the present day setup. So, I gave you the example of Microsoft. When Windows 95 was doing very well, none other than the founder of Microsoft, that is Bill Gates, cannibalized that product. He said, suppose I do not cannibalize this product now, when it is doing well, the competitor will make it to get cannibalized. So, there will be competition in the marketplace and this product might become extinct. So, this is what is happening in the present day setup. The next one which is happening right now with respect to both the IT and the manufacturing industry is autonomous work teams. This is virtual working, may lead to greater efficiency and reduction in supervision. So, the result is you are given a task, you are responsible for the execution of the task. In order to execute that task, you may have to coordinate with different work teams at different places. This is what most of our IT employees are doing. So, this is what is called virtual working. So, one team might be in Bangalore, he might be coordinating with a team in California in US. So, these autonomous work teams given a task asked to come out with a portion of the product or the software, whatever you are referring to, the application. So, this autonomous work teams may lead to greater efficiency and reduction in supervision. The result is you do not have to supervise him on a day to day basis, but still you get the report from this work team. So, work team should have better training to handle conflict. This is what is happening in the present day setup. So, each work team thinks that he is extraordinary. So, why should I listen to the other work team person? So, the work team should have better training to handle conflict management. So, when you are looking at these things, you should have better training for handling conflict management. Before we go to this strategic factors analysis summary, I go to this book on strategic management. Please look at page number 85. This gives you how strategic groups are formed. This page 85 says categorizing firms in an industry which pursue similar strategies with similar resources as a set of business units is referred to as strategic group. This can help in better understanding of the competitive environment. Since a company's structure and culture tend to reflect the kinds of strategies it follows, business units belonging to a strategic group within the same industry tend to become strong rivals and more similar to each other than to competitors in the group within the same industry. So, an example of the bakery industry in Bangalore is given to come out with a typical mapping of strategic groups in the bakery industry in Bangalore. So, you had the Butter Sponge, Nilgiris, Koshis in one circle, the VB bakeries in the middle, then at the higher end you have this Pizza Hut, Lakeview, all those types of things. So, this is the type of this thing which came out. So, the other one which I wanted to bring to your notice before we go to this SFAS was what is the type of the structure of the industry and the competitive strategy, how it is really changing. If you looked at it, these changes are given in table 8.5. This table 8.5 with respect to 8.5 with respect to the generic strategies of Porter. So, the result is, look at the one particular example, just look at focus. Combination of the above policies directed at the particular strategic target. So, what is that? This is what is the common organizational requirements. Combination of the above policies directed at the particular strategic target is required both in skills and resources and also in organizational requirements. So, this is the type of scenario which you are likely to have in the present day marketplace. So, this having these generic strategies and sustaining with that is a real task. So, with all this, we come to what is the how to look at the strategic factor analysis. So, you looked at the IFAS, you looked at the IFAS, and with respect to the same company, let us say Maytag, you look at strategic factor analysis summary. How do you do that? So, from the two tables, that is the summaries given, you take the most important opportunities or threats, then the most important strengths and weaknesses from the IFAS, then come to the strengths and the weaknesses, opportunities and threats. So, when you looked at Maytag, again quality was the one which was holding key. So, the notes column tell you how they arrived at this SFAS matrix for this company Maytag. Why we are looking at all these three matrices? Because this is the one which an Indian organization should also do or attempt to do in the present day context. Because the market is changing very fast. When the markets are changing very fast, you cannot be a mute spectator. Many times it pains to note that HMT watches have now become a showpiece, considering that HMT was the first company to introduce the quartz watch in the Indian market, and their tagline was timekeepers to the nation. The timekeepers to the nation had a collaboration with Citizen, came out with the first quartz watch in the early 80s. Now, the HMT watch itself has become a showpiece type of scenario. Earlier you used to have showrooms repairing only HMT watches. Now, you have to find that showroom where your HMT watch can be repaired if you have one. Many times they say, sir, why do you want to continue with the HMT watch? Why don't you take the Titan watch? So, it is another story that Titan itself was an offshoot of many ex-HMT employees, starting this under this Titan brand name. So, this is in another way, many times many persons used to say, what is Titan? After all, it is a HMT watch in the garb of Titan only, but whatever it is, the entry of Titan started to dent the HMT slowly, and now HMT itself has become extinct in the marketplace, the watches. So, earlier HMT started as a lathe manufacturing company, was in fact in the competitive market. Even in that, a much smaller company has given jolts to HMT, whether it was with respect to its usual lathes or the modern lathes. So, the company is Ace Designers in Bangalore only. So, HMT started feeling the brunt of this competition with respect to CNC lathes from a much smaller company like Ace. So, this is what can happen in the present day market setup. Suppose you are keeping your eyes closed to what is happening in the marketplace. This is what the LPG era has done. So, this is the reason why a company should go in for analysis of its internal factors, external factors. Using these internal factors and external factors, it should come out with a strategic factor analysis for the company. So, these three matrices play a very important role. So, this so what happened to this Maytag through these different matrices is essential. It is becoming an essential factor with respect to most of the Indian companies in the present day market. This is what this is an important aspect that we have tried to dwell on in this particular subject. So, we started with how we had corporate planning in the first place, then moved over to strategic management, then in the strategic management itself how the time period has got reduced. So, we were looking at 3 years, now we are looking at even a next year strategy, all those types of things. So, because the competition has become very acute in the marketplace with respect to any industry or any product. So, they have to keep their eyes and ears open as to what is happening. So, this is the scenario, present day scenario which you are seeing in the marketplace. This LPG era has in fact intensified the whole competition. So, suppose you thought that yours was an invincible product in the marketplace, no, it is not going to be invincible. You may find very soon a similar product entering the market. Okay. This has happened to so many reputed players in the marketplace. The example that I was giving of Ford, you find in the present day scenario you have to just look at where is a Ford car. You have the other brands like Toyota or Honda overtaking Ford by leaps and bounds in the Indian market. Also, both these brands have made a significant mark, even though Maruti is the leader in the automotive market even to this day, but still these companies have also made a big mark in the Indian market. So, that is this is what as I told you many times, even the competitors of Honda recognize its main strength is its engine, which they are not able to really beat. So, this is what they say internally, though they may not say that externally. they will confide internally to you Honda is the best engine in the automotive market, but they will not tell that in the open. Okay. So, this is what happens what in the marketplace when it is competition galore as it is the present day case. So, we stop here. Before we move to the next aspects of this subject, we look at some cases, how to do a case analysis. This is where the book on case analysis which I have suggested to you will be very helpful. Kindly purchase these two books, that is the book on strategic management written by me, that is the 6th edition published by Prentice Hall 2020, and then the case studies book, case studies in marketing, the Indian context, the 7th edition again published by Prentice Hall. It has come out in the year 2018. Both are really good books sought in the marketplace and used by most of the reputed institutions in this country and easily available to you, because it is coming in the Eastern Economy edition, very reasonably priced, and I am sure you will find both of them to be useful not only for this course, but also for your professional career. Okay, we stop here. In the next class, we will take up how to do a case analysis, what really contributes to case analysis, how should we go about doing a case analysis. We will try to take up one or two companies to illustrate the case presentation, which is a very important aspect in the present day setup. Okay. Take up some live examples also from the book on case studies. As you see, all this book on case studies gives you the real life examples, mostly from the Indian context. They are real life cases from the Indian scenario. Okay, we stop here. We will continue in the next session. Thank you.